Good evening. My name is Keith B. Thomas, and I'm a graduate student at American Military University, currently enrolled in EVSP 504 Fisheries Management. During this presentation, I will discuss the impact of dams on fishery resources. However, I will only discuss four dams in particular. These dams regulate current flow along the Klamath River, which runs from southern Oregon to northeastern California. I will discuss why I chose these particular dams, the aquatic species impacted by the dams, and what I learned about this threat to fishery resources. After searching through online documents attempting to discover dams with significant information, I decided to focus on dams co-located amongst one another to understand the dam's effect on aquatic species and ecosystems within the region. I decided that the information had to include the current status of each structure along the same hydrological system and current status of each dam. I chose John C. Boyle, Iron Gate, Copco 1, and Copco 2 dams located along the Klamath River, which runs from Upper Klamath Lake in Oregon to California. The John C. Boyle Dam, the Iron Gate Dam, Copco 1 Dam, Copco 2 Dam. The operating license for the Klamath project began January 28, 1954, and concluded on February 28, 2006. After February 28, 2006, the operating licenses approvals were annual up until 2007, for which Pacific Coast Committee staff issued a final environmental impact statement with a focus on multiple courses of action that would keep the dams operational with a few caveats to support the river's ecosystem sprinkled in. However, Pacific Coast Committee's EIS ultimately requested the renewal of additional licenses, which they justified by including hazard mitigation course of action. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, denied the Pacific Coast request for license renewal, renamed the Klamath Project to the Lower Klamath Project, and began the lengthy legal process to decommission the four dams starting summer of 2023. There are three unique species of fish jeopardized by the existence of the Lower Klamath Project: coho salmon, Lost River sucker, and the short-nosed sucker. These fish are also supported by the Endangered Species Act, approved within the last 4 decades by the Fish and Wildlife Service and the National Marine Fisheries Service. The Lower Klamath Project's dams negatively affect coho salmon because of the species' dependence on minimum downstream water flows. The dam system also affects the Lost River short-nosed suckers due to the species' requirement for sustained water retention in the upper basin of the Klamath River. Historically, other aquatic species also suffered from the lower Klamath dams. Some suffering resulted in significant loss of life. For example, in September 2002, more than 34,000 salmon, 1% which were coho, died from a disease outbreak fueled by the overcrowding of fish in the low, warm mouth of the Klamath River, closed off by the dams. Although researchers observed coho salmon in significant river systems throughout California and Oregon, many spawning runs declined or are non-existent from streams branching from the Klamath River. The federal and state governments currently list coho salmon under the California Endangered Species Act and the Federal Endangered Species Act to increase the species' survival. The Lost River sucker species remains federally protected under the Endangered Species Act, initially approved in 1988. However, since 2002, the abundance of Lost River suckers declined by 65%, with most of the remaining adults dying out without spawning. In 2015, conservationists created the Sucker Assisted Ring Program, with aspirations to release 60,000 juvenile Lost River suckers annually. The Sucker Assisted Ring Program remains active as of December 2022. The short-nosed sucker remains protected under the Federal Endangered Species Act, for which the federal government listed the species in 1988. The 1993 recovery plan for the species received a revision in 2013 with limited changes. The species is currently a part of the same sucker-assisted rearing program as the Lost River sucker, with the first release of juveniles occurring in 2018 and annually since that time. I have learned two lessons from low Klamath Project's threat to fishery resources: the slow burn of legislation and the effects of dams on aquatic ecosystems. Civil and federal disputes over the low Klamath Project's existence lasted for more than 20 years. Before and during the slow burn of annual license renewal submissions, license transfer application approval, and contractor bids, the adverse effects that the dam have and are had on Klamath River's ecosystems continued. Anthropogenically, a person could overlook the damage of a man-made structure if the benefit of having the structure outweighed the environmental damage imposed. A person may also overlook the damage of a man-made structure if an EIS for applying mitigation techniques ensures a mandatory sustainable condition for the ecosystem affected. However, in the case of the low Klamath project dams, the small amount of hydropower, averaging 80 megawatts, does not justify the dam's existence, especially when Pacific Core has operational replacement power units providing substantial amounts of power. It took members of the Klamath tribes in Oregon and Upper Klamath Lake years of legislation and conferences with Pacific Core and the FERC before the tribes made headway, mainly because of the cost of the dam's deconstruction, which is estimated at $450 million. The FERC ultimately has authority over the Low Klamath project, so the corporation must legally follow procedural protocols. Additionally, the Lower Klamath Project's dam removal involves evaluating the environmental impact of the dam's removal, which further slows the process. Tenacity and following every step of the legal process are vital during the slow burn of legislation. Amending a document because of human error will only extend the process indefinitely. The effects of dams on aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems can be both positive and negative. Although limited, one positive effect a dam could have on an already established ecosystem is the creation of a wetland habitat after the dam. Due to impedance, a dam reservoir will naturally increase with water. Once the water increases and leaches into the edges of the reservoir bank, an unnatural habitat for wetland species may appear, which could support waterfowl and other similar creatures. Unnatural erosion is one negative byproduct of dams that directly affect fisheries ecosystem management upstream and downstream. For example, during the natural flow of water through a dam, sediment impounds after the structure and suspends fine sand called silt. The silt then passes through the dam's waterway, but leaves behind heavier sediment. This sudden flow of water without heavier sediment begins to erode the riverbanks forward of the dam, sometimes miles downriver, often disrupting the riparian ecosystems. This disruption of riparian ecosystems may displace, reduce, or eradicate native fish species, invertebrates, and amphibians. Dams also affect the temperature gradients of the water masses they impede. Dams have multidimensional effects on ecosystems, specifically on thermal conditions. Lesser than Hayes 2003 sampled the impacts of elevated reservoir and/or river temperatures on fish and microinvertebrates below microdams from 1998 to 1999. The team discovered that mean summer temperatures varied from a cooling of 33 degrees Fahrenheit after the dam to an increase of more than 41 degrees Fahrenheit forward of the dam. This drastic change in temperature affects cold water fish species miles downriver, specifically brown trout, brook trout, and slimy sculpin. The temperature changes forward of the dam alters microinvertebrate communities' composition substantially, destabilizing the biomass. Dams can be both beneficial and detrimental to an ecosystem. Close evaluation of outdated dams should occur periodically to ensure dam efficiency, energy yields, or have a natural function that justifies the dam's disruption of environmental niches. If you have comments or questions concerning this presentation, please contact me at the email listed below. Thanks for watching.